Let me begin with an invitation. Set aside, just for a while, everything you think you know about how life works. The mechanics of success, the nature of the body, the limits of what's possible. Set it aside, not to reject it, but simply to make room. Because what I want to share with you comes from a teacher who lived more than a century ago, and whose ideas remain startling in their implications. His name was Prentice Mulford, and he had a single, radical proposition. That thought is not merely something you do, it is something you are made of. That thought is a force, as real as gravity, as substantial as water, and that you are using it every moment of your life, whether you know it or not. The question, then, is not whether you will use this force. You already are. The question is whether you will learn to use it well. Part 1. The Unseen Architecture. We live in a world of visible things. The chair beneath you, the walls around you, the device through which you're hearing these words. All of it appears solid, fixed, permanent. But Mulford asks us to consider something extraordinary, that every visible thing you see was once invisible. That before the chair existed, it existed first as a thought in someone's mind, a pattern, a vision, a design held in consciousness, until it found its way into form. This is not mysticism in the vague sense. This is observation. Every building, every bridge, every piece of clothing began as thought. The material world is, quite literally, crystallized thought, mind made manifest. But here's where Mulford goes further than most. He argues that this process doesn't stop with human inventions. Your body, he says, is also thought made visible. The state of your health, your vitality, your very cellular structure. These are the accumulated results of how you have been thinking, not as metaphor, as mechanism. Think of it this way. Imagine minds as telegraph stations, each one sending out signals and receiving them in turn. Your thoughts are not contained within your skull. They radiate outward, like ripples on water, touching other minds, drawing certain things toward you, and pushing other things away. And here is the first principle to understand. Like attracts like. The frequency of your habitual thought does not exist in isolation. It seeks its own kind. If you spend your days immersed in worry, your mind is broadcasting on the frequency of worry, and it is receiving messages from that same frequency. You are tuned to a station, whether you chose it consciously or not. This is why certain people seem to attract bad luck, while others seem magnetically fortunate. It is not luck at all, it is attunement. They are each living in the thought atmosphere they have created around themselves. Mulford speaks of what he calls our double life. By day, we move through the physical world with our physical body. But by night, during sleep, our spirit travels, learns, and acts in ways our waking mind does not remember. We are far more than this visible form. The body is a focal point, the place where spirit touches matter, but the spirit itself is vast, extending beyond the skin, capable of influence at a distance, because it was never truly contained in the first place. This understanding changes everything. If you are not simply a ghost trapped in a machine, but rather a field of energy using the body as an instrument, then the whole question of health and power and possibility shifts. You are not working against fixed limits. You are learning to conduct a force you had not previously understood. Part 2. The Leakage of Power. Now we come to the heart of human suffering as Mulford understood it, not as fate, not as punishment, but as waste. Most people, he observed, are exhausted, not because they work too hard, but because they leak energy constantly, in 100 unconscious ways. They hurry when there's no need to hurry. They worry about problems that haven't arrived. They fret over conversations that ended hours ago. They chatter when silence would serve them better. They tense muscles that don't need tensing, clench jaws that could be soft. All of this is leakage, vital force, spilling out in every direction, leaving nothing in reserve. Imagine a bucket with holes in it. You can carry it to the well as many times as you like. But if the holes aren't patched, you will always arrive home with less than you collected. This is the condition of most human lives. We are buckets with holes, wondering why we feel so empty despite constant effort to fill ourselves. Mulford identifies the specific holes. Hurry is one. Not speed when speed is needed, but the inner rush that has become a constant state. The sense that we are always behind, always catching up, always racing to the next moment. This kind of hurry is not efficiency. It is a quiet form of madness, and it drains us far more than the actual work ever could. Worry is another. Every moment spent imagining a future catastrophe is a moment of building that catastrophe in the invisible realm. You are using your creative power, that same power that could build health and fortune, to construct disaster. And all the while, the worry itself consumes energy, leaving you depleted. Then there is scattered attention, that peculiar modern affliction of doing one thing while the mind rushes ahead to the next. Tying your shoes while planning your afternoon, walking down the street while rehearsing an argument. The body is here, but the mind is there, and the division splits your force in two. Neither gets your full power. This is why Mulford places such emphasis on what he calls repose, not laziness, not inactivity. Repose is a gathered stillness, a state of being present without strain, alert without tension. It is the state in which power accumulates rather than scatters. Watch a cat sometime. A cat lying in the sun is not doing nothing. It is storing energy, coiled and ready. When it moves with total commitment, every fiber aligned. Then it returns to stillness. This is repose. This is the natural rhythm that we have forgotten. The person who cultivates repose begins to notice a change. They tire less easily. Their presence becomes more magnetic. People listen when they speak, not because they speak loudly, but because their words carry weight, the weight of force behind them. Part 3. The Physics of Regeneration. Here we arrive at one of Mulford's most provocative claims, that the body is not destined for decay, that what we call aging is not a fixed law of nature, but a thought habit, a collective hypnosis we have all accepted without examination. Consider, the cells of your body are constantly dying and being replaced. Your stomach lining renews itself every few days, your skin every few weeks. Even your bones, over the course of years, are entirely rebuilt. You are not the same physical body you were a decade ago. Every atom has been exchanged. Yet we age. Why? Mulford's answer is this: because we expect to, because we have absorbed from childhood the collective thought of the race, the deep assumption that bodies grow old, decline, and die. We breathe in this thought like air. We see it confirmed everywhere we look, and so we create it, dutifully, in our own flesh. The thought of old age is not neutral information. It is a force. When you think of yourself as aging, you are directing creative energy toward that outcome. When you dwell on disease, you are providing the blueprint and the building material. This is not blame. This is mechanism. Mulford is not saying illness is your fault, but that understanding the mechanism gives you something you didn't have before, the possibility of working with it differently. He speaks of what he calls the doctor within, that intelligence in the body which knows how to heal, which mends cuts and fights infections, and maintains the miraculous complexity of your physical form, without any conscious direction from you. This doctor is always at work, but it works best when you support it, and worst when you undermine it with fear. Modern medicine has its own version of this truth, the placebo effect. A sugar pill, believed to be medicine, can trigger real healing. The belief itself activates the body's repair systems. Mulford would say this is not strange at all. This is exactly how thought works on matter. And the only strange thing is that we continue to think of it as an exception rather than the rule. The practical implication is this: stop feeding the body thoughts of decay. When you catch yourself expecting decline, I'm getting too old for this. My body isn't what it used to be. Recognize that you are not making a neutral observation. You are issuing an instruction. And the body, that obedient instrument, will follow. Part 4. The Science of Demand. We turn now to what Mulford calls the silent demand, the mechanism by which opportunity and resources are drawn toward us. This is not magic. It is physics, operating on a level we rarely consider. Most people, when they want something, push for it. They strain, grasp, chase. And the strange thing is, the harder they push, the more the thing they want seems to recede. They can see this in their own experience, yet they push harder still, because it is the only method they know. Mulford identifies what is happening. A pushing mind, he says, repels. It creates resistance and contraction, opposition. A drawing mind attracts. It creates openings, possibilities, flow. Think of the difference between a salesperson who pursues you with desperate energy and one who is quietly confident, certain that what they offer is valuable. The desperate energy makes you want to escape. The confident ease makes you curious to hear more. The product might be identical, but the energy changes everything. This is what Mulford means by the silent demand. It is not begging, it is claiming, holding in mind, with calm certainty, what you know to be necessary for your growth. Not, I hope this comes to me. Rather, this is mine, it is on its way. I do not know the route, but I know the destination. The paradox is that this certainty requires letting go of the how. You set the direction, but you surrender the method. You steer the ship, but the ocean carries it. This is not passivity. You still work, still act, still move toward what you want. But you do so without the contraction of anxiety, without the desperation that pushes away the very thing you seek. There is a companion principle here, and it concerns the company you keep. Mulford is quite direct about this. You absorb the mental state of those you are with. Association is not neutral. It is contagion. If you spend your hours with people who are cynical, who see only obstacles, who rehearse their failures, you will absorb their frequency, not because they convince you with arguments, but because thought radiates, and proximity means exposure. You will find yourself thinking thoughts that are not originally yours. This can feel harsh. We have been taught that loyalty means staying with people regardless of their effect on us. But Mulford asks, if those people are drowning, and you jump in to save them, but instead drown with them, who is helped? Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stay on the shore and throw a rope. You cannot lift anyone higher than the level you yourself occupy. Part 5. The Art of Forgetting. This brings us to one of Mulford's most practical teachings, something he calls the art of forgetting. When something troubles you, a grief, a conflict, a worry, the natural instinct is to think about it more. We believe that by dwelling on problems, we are working towards solutions. We rehearse conversations, analyze causes, imagine outcomes. But Mulford points out what we already know. If we're honest, this doesn't help. The more we dwell on a problem, the larger it looms. The grief does not diminish with rehearsal, it deepens. The conflict is not resolved by mental argument, it entrenches. Here is why. Every thought is a flow of vital force. When you dwell on something, you feed it energy. You keep it alive, make it stronger, build it out with fresh material. A problem that might have withered from neglect is instead sustained by your constant attention. The art of forgetting is the deliberate withdrawal of attention, not denial. You do not pretend the problem doesn't exist, not suppression. You do not shove it into the dark. Rather, you simply stop feeding it. You turn your attention elsewhere, to something that nourishes rather than drains. And in that withdrawal of energy, the problem often resolves itself through channels you could not have planned. This is not avoidance. This is understanding that sometimes the supreme power, that intelligence which runs the universe, can work on a problem better than your conscious mind can. But it can only do so when you stop interfering. Mulford applies this same principle to the past itself, living in memory, constantly revisiting old times, dwelling on what was. This crystallizes the body and mind into old patterns. To stay young, in the deepest sense, one must constantly entertain new ideas and look forward, not from denial of what has been, but from the understanding that life flows forward, and we must flow with it. Part 6. The Sanctuary of Stillness. Among Mulford's practical recommendations, one stands out for its simplicity and its power. He advises that you create a sanctuary, a physical space, however small, dedicated to stillness and high thought. It might be a room, it might be a corner, it might be a chair by a window. But it must be a place where you do not allow worry to enter, where you do not conduct arguments, where agitation is left at the threshold. Why does this matter? Because thought atmosphere accumulates. The mental states you cultivate in a space leave a residue there, like incense in a room. Over time, a space that has been consistently used for calm and contemplation develops its own quality. You can feel it when you enter, it supports you, it makes stillness easier. This is not mere psychology, though psychology would confirm it. Mulford means it quite literally. Thought is substance, and substance accumulates. A sanctuary becomes a battery that recharges you. The more consistently you use it, the more powerful it becomes. The same principle works in reverse, of course. Spaces where conflict has occurred, where anxiety has been the dominant state, carry that residue too. We all know this intuitively. Certain rooms feel heavy, certain buildings seem to drain us. We say the place has bad energy, and we are more accurate than we know. Part 7. Doing and being. There is an apparent paradox in Mulford's teaching that we should address directly. On one hand, he speaks of demand, of claiming what is yours, of directing energy toward goals. On the other, he speaks of repose, surrender, and letting the supreme power work through you. Which is it? Are we to act or to rest? The answer is both, but in their proper relationship. Think of the difference between work and strain. You can chop wood all afternoon and feel tired but satisfied, energized in a deep way. Or you can sit at a desk for an hour, caught in anxiety and resistance, and feel utterly exhausted. The effort was less, but the strain was greater. Strain is what happens when the mind and body are at odds. You push forward while fear pulls back. You reach for success while doubt whispers failure. The division consumes more energy than the work itself. Repose is not the absence of activity, it is the presence of alignment. It is working with your whole being unified and without the internal resistance that makes everything harder than it needs to be. Athletes call this being in the zone, or flow state. When everything clicks, effort becomes effortless. You are more effective than ever, yet somehow it doesn't deplete you. This is what Mulford means by active repose. You are doing, but without the doing that fights against itself. So the practice is this. Set the direction with clarity. Know what you want. Hold the vision without grasping. Then do the work that appears before you. But do it from a gathered stillness, without the anxiety that splits your force. Let the universe handle the parts you cannot see. Your job is to be ready, to be present, to act when action is called for, not to orchestrate every detail through sheer will. Part 8. The Ultimate Possibility. We come now to Mulford's most radical proposition, not as something you must believe, but as a horizon to contemplate. Most spiritual traditions promise life after death. Mulford proposes something different, life without death. He argues that if the body is indeed thought-made, and if thought can be continuously renewed, then there is no fixed law requiring the body to decay. What we call death is the result of running out of life current, the accumulated depletion from years of leakage, years of accepting the thought of age, years of building decay with our own creative power. What if it were possible, he asks, to flush the body with new thought faster than the old patterns can crystallize? To remain in such a state of renewal that the cells never accumulate the residue of age? This, he suggests, is the ultimate destiny of human evolution, not to escape the body into some spiritual realm, but to spiritualize the body so completely that it becomes a perfect instrument, indefinitely renewed. Now, whether or not you accept this as literal possibility is not the point. Mulford himself acknowledged that this represented the far horizon of human development, perhaps not achievable in a single lifetime, but the direction matters. Even if immortality remains out of reach, the practices that move toward it, the conservation of force, the cultivation of new thought, the refusal to accept decay as inevitable, these have practical value right now. Perhaps we cannot live forever, but we can certainly live longer, healthier, more vital lives by understanding and working with these principles. The destination may be distant, but the journey begins today. Part 9. The Modern Relevance. Mulford wrote these teachings over 100 years ago, yet in some ways they are more relevant now than ever. Consider the thought currents he described, the invisible streams of mental influence that we get caught in without realizing. Today, we have materialized these currents in the form of algorithms. Social media feeds are literally designed to capture your attention, to keep you in particular thought states, to make you feel certain emotions that serve someone else's agenda. When you engage with doom scrolling, with anger, fear, outrage, the algorithm feeds you more of the same. It is the law of attraction made visible, mechanical, undeniable, like attracts like. And the more you consume a particular frequency of thought, the more of that frequency you are served. Consider also the epidemic of burnout. We have an entire generation exhausted not from too much work, but from the constant fracturing of attention that Mulford identified, the notification that interrupts you, the tab you leave open, just in case, the low-level emergency state that has become the water we swim in, so constant that we no longer notice it. Mulford's prescription, repose and presence, the gathering of scattered attention, is exactly what the modern world makes difficult and exactly what the modern person most needs. Even the science confirms what he taught. The placebo effect demonstrates that belief shapes physical outcome. Research on meditation shows measurable changes in brain structure and immune function. Studies of stress reveal its literal effects on cellular aging. What seemed mystical in Mulford's time is increasingly measured in ours. Part 10. The practice itself. Let me distill what we have covered into practical guidance, not rules to follow mechanically, but principles to embody. First, treat your thoughts as real, not as passing mental weather, but as substance. When you catch yourself dwelling on fear or failure, recognize that you are building something in the invisible realm. Withdraw the energy. Turn it toward what you want to grow instead. Second, plug the leaks. Notice where your energy scatters, in hurry that has become habit, in worry about what hasn't happened, in mental arguments with people who aren't present. Each time you catch yourself, gently gather the attention back. This is a practice, not a perfection. You will scatter and gather 1,000 times. That is the work. Third, cultivate repose, not as occasional relaxation, but as a way of moving through life. Do one thing at a time, with your whole attention. When you walk, walk. When you eat, eat. When you work, let the mind be in the work, not racing ahead to the next task. Slowness is not the goal, presence is. Fourth, practice the silent demand. Know what you want, not just vaguely or no, but clearly. Hold it in mind with calm certainty, as something already on its way to you. Do not beg the universe. Claim what is necessary for your growth, then release the how, and do whatever work appears before you. Fifth, choose your associations consciously. You become like those you spend time with. This is not judgment. It is physics. Seek out people who lift you, who call forth your best, who are themselves moving in the direction you want to go. And when you must be with those who drain you, protect your energy rather than absorbing their state. Sixth, master the art of forgetting. When a problem has been dealt with as much as it can be for now, withdraw your attention from it completely. Trust that forces greater than your conscious mind can work on it in the background. Dwelling feeds the problem. Forgetting starves it. Seventh, create a sanctuary, dedicate a space, any space, to stillness. Use it consistently. Let no agitation enter there. Over time, it will become a battery, a place where you can recharge simply by being present in it. Eighth, look forward. The past is a resource for learning, not a place to live. When you catch yourself dwelling in memory, turn your gaze to what is coming. New thoughts, new possibilities, new growth. The body follows where the mind leads. Lead it toward renewal. Closing. An invitation. We have traveled together through Prentice Mulford's vision of human possibility, a vision that places enormous power and responsibility in our own minds, not as wishful thinking, but as a recognition of how things actually work. You are using your thought force right now, in this very moment. The only question is whether you use it consciously or unconsciously, whether you direct it or let it scatter, whether you build what you want or what you fear. These ideas cannot be learned from listening alone. They must be practiced, tested, verified in your own experience. And so I leave you not with conclusions, but with questions. In the last hour, how much energy did you leak through hurried movements, anxious forecasting, or mental arguments with people not present? If your current dominant thought were to materialize as a physical object, what would you be holding in your hand right now? Are you trying to power your life solely with the limited fuel of physical will, or are you taking time to connect to something larger, to recharge from the source? The forces Mulford describes are yours. They have always been yours, not something to acquire, but something to recognize and remember. Begin where you are. Begin with one breath of genuine stillness, one moment of gathered attention, one conscious choice about where your thought will dwell. That is enough. That is the beginning. The rest will unfold from there.